Welcome to Greenable Woodbridge. I am your host, Carolyn Ehrlich. As part of our Juneteenth celebration, I wanted to honor two people who have been, two Black people actually, who have been champions of the environment. So for my first guest, I didn't have to go much further than walking across the hall to my friend Mike Gelin, who is the Director of Engineering right here in Woodbridge Township. And I said to Mike, can you think of anybody else who could be on the show and would make it a really exciting show? And he said to me I should call Phil Scott, who has the same job, Director of Engineering in Newark. Same job's probably a bit different. Now you took Mike's job, because you weren't the director there, but what was your title when you were in Newark?
Assistant director.
Assistant director. So, but more than that, I understand that you gentlemen go all the way back to college together. I'm sure our viewers would love to hear about that.
Pretty interesting. I think we met in fluid mechanics with Olenek, right?
Yes, probably that is the case. I do remember while we were in school, Mike had an on-campus job working in the residence halls, basically making sure people are swiping in and out.
That's right.
That's right. And even back then, Mike was very diligent in doing a good job, making sure people were doing what they were supposed to.
Right.
When I went to college, which was quite a bit further ahead than you, girls had a curfew, and we had to sign in and we had to sign out, and they were very diligent about that.
And I must admit, Phil was always a gentleman. He doesn't talk much, and you still like this too now, right?
I speak when needed.
And you too are a gentleman.
Yeah.
So it must be something about, which college was it?
NJIT.
NJIT. So it must be something about that great school.
Back in the days, it was more of engineering college, more of civil than anything else.
Right.
Yes, I was actually just on campus just last week. They were having a ceremony for the president who's retiring, and I was able to see
Mr.
how
Bloom?
much Dr. Bloom. Yes, I was able to see how much the campus has changed, how much it has grown. They've added additional colleges within the university. So, you know, initially the university started out as the Newark College of Engineering, and in 1974 it changed to NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology, when they added on the School of Architecture. And then since then it's been growing and growing and growing. So they have a School of Management, now they have School of Liberal Arts. So it's great to see how the university has changed over the years.
And they do a lot of innovation there.
Yes, they do.
I think, didn't we do something with them, with resiliency or something about our water levels? Am I getting that right?
Yes, you do. They are research university. They do work with a lot of township. Woodbridge is included. Also, Newark Water they are involved with Newark Water as well.
So yeah, our colleges in New Jersey are great assets for all of the municipalities and towns because they do give back. Sometimes they charge us for it, but they do give back. Please tell our viewers what got you interested in engineering, and young people who want to enter the field, what would your advice be?
That's a good question. As for me, since I was probably 5 or 6, I always see myself as an engineer.
Really?
Yes. And it was because where I grew up, back in Haiti, it was an engineer meant a lot to people. They will not call you by the name. They will say, "Here's the engineer coming. Here's the engineer coming." And I will try to make little documents that looks like an engineer, even in the drawing, houses, bridges, and then it grew up in my mind as always. I didn't have any thought about doing anything else.
Wow, so this is your dream.
Yes, yes,
That is
it's a
wonderful.
dream come true.
That is great. And how about you?
It was a little different for me. Growing up, I had always thought I wanted to be an architect. So all through high school, it was always my plan to go to college to be an architect. I had applied to NJIT, and almost right from the very beginning, when I found out what was involved with the architecture program, I said, this is not for me. So for after all of those years thinking that's what I wanted to do, I changed and wanted to do something different. What a lot of people don't know is with architecture, it's very technical, but it's also very artistic. And I had the technical discipline and background, but the artistic part, I just didn't really have the same passion for it as a lot of the other students had. So I chose to go a different route, and that's when I chose to go into civil engineering. So I eventually changed my major. Which was great because I didn't spend a lot of time taking architecture classes that wouldn't count towards my graduation as a civil major. And I chose civil engineering because it was somewhat in a connected field involving building and construction. So that's how I ended up becoming a civil engineer.
And you also love your job.
I love it. I
what you
can't
do.
imagine doing anything else. I don't know what else I'd be doing if I wasn't a civil engineer.
I'll say the same thing.
Now, before you joined Newark, you worked for a private company, Matrix, and I understand you did some work right here in Woodbridge.
Yes, so prior to coming to work for the city of Newark, I worked in the private sector. I have about 16 years of working in the private sector for consultant engineering firms, and the last firm that I did work for was Matrix New World Engineering. It was a great experience, and I worked on, yes, a project here in Woodbridge, which is known as Reinhardt Manor. We repurposed an old school, and we made it into a affordable housing for seniors, and it was a great project. It was great working with the township, the planning department, and the mayor's office. Everyone was very supportive, and it turned out to be a very successful project.
It really is, and the people who live there are so happy. It is great.
I'm happy to hear that.
Yes.
If I may chime in, when I was in Newark, Phil was not in Newark back then. I started in Newark after graduation from college. Phil will come to me as the consultant. We'll be talking about projects, and then I think when Mayor Baraka got elected and you came with him, right?
Yes, I came in during the Barack administration. He started July 1st of 2014, and I remember going to his inaugural ball, and a few people asked me would I be interested in the position working in Newark, and I really wasn't interested because I enjoyed what I did in the private sector. But after some convincing, I submitted my resume, in the process, and then it wasn't until meeting Mayor Baraka that I said, you know what, this is somebody that I would like to work for. I'd like to be a part of what's going on here in Newark.
He does have an amazing vision.
And it's been great ever since.
Yeah, and I'll bet Mayor Baraka is not the kind of guy that you can say no to too easily.
Not at all. Not at all. He does not take no for an answer.
Now, Mike, you have a really interesting story about how you got this job, how it came to be.
Yes,
and how you met the mayor.
A true successful story too. I was in Newark. I was not looking for a job. I was very happy with what I was doing as the deputy director. And I think back in 2011, Irene came. Our neighborhood was flooded. Then, but before that, I always far away, the mayor was doing a fantastic job. Even when I was in Newark, when he got reelected, I shot him an email, say congratulations and many more years to come. He'll say thanks, pal, but he doesn't know who I was. And sure enough, after Irene, the neighbors came and said, let's go to the mayor's office, we have to talk to him. When I came to his office, I thought he was going to have a lot of bodyguard, like police. And I saw the regular guys sat with everybody talking to them. And I said, Mayor, you really have a good vision for the neighbor. And as a civil engineer, I can feel your pain. He said, oh, you're an engineer? I said, yes, I work in Newark. And then he said, man, this is something I must know. And then the next day he sent me an email, say, Pa, I would love to talk to you soon. And that's how I get. And to be honest with you, I was not looking forward, but I wanted to work for this man.
Yeah, another person you can't say no to.
Yes.
So I remember that meeting. I wasn't at the meeting, but after the meeting, the mayor came over to me and he said, I met the most fantastic guy. And Scott Thompson, who was our engineer, was getting to the point where he was going to retire. And so John never forgot.
Right.
And the moment Scott said, I'm retiring, he was on the phone with you. And it has been a beautiful story ever since.
And I remember that day when you sat for the interview as well. I came from Newark, after, for an hour of interview. And I always remember to that day, you, Bob Lindolfi, the business administrator, and the mayor, all three of you sat with me. And then I knew I had that job because the way you welcomed me, and I never forget this.
Yeah, we're very lucky.
Yeah.
So the size of the departments, I guess, engineering, are very different in Newark and in Woodbridge, which would mean that your responsibilities are different. Talk a little bit about the work that you do, especially with what affects the environment.
Right. Newark is big, but I'll speak for Woodbridge. We do a lot in engineering, and I always make it a point that as development comes in, we are very sustainable when it comes to climate change. We do have stormwater management, a strong review, and consultants truly appreciate it. My goal is not to have any flooding with any of the developments we have. So we do take pride in review page by page, whatever calculations they provided, and they know they have to do a good job because either Mike or somebody else will back check their calculations.
Yep. You are. So I don't know if you have this in Newark, but we have a technical review committee that the professionals all look at the plans before they go to the planning board, hoping that all of the questions are answered before it goes before the board. And Mike will come back with sometimes a 3-page list of things they should do and questions and how they can improve it. But you don't just throw this at them. You'll hold their hand if they need it. You'll get them to the point where they can go to the board and be successful, and it's so important.
Absolutely, that's the goal.
Yeah,
that's the goal. Not to be a stumble block, but just to help, give it a helping hand. And they do mean well when they do the calculation, but sometimes as a reviewer, you have to make sure things are done right.
Yep, it's not. And how about in Newark?
So we have a very similar process. We don't have a technical review committee ahead of time, but you are required to submit the plans within a certain amount of time before you go to the board. And we try to make that time as long as possible to give our reviewers a chance to review and make the comments. So we do a very detailed review, especially around areas of stormwater. Newark has probably the highest level of standard in terms of stormwater requirements for private developments any development that's coming into the city. And we work very closely with the applicant's engineer, and we will take whatever time is needed to make sure that the project is successful. Newark is unique in the senses that we're kind of at the end of the line in terms of elevation, so a lot of the stormwater is running downhill coming from other communities coming into Newark. So we have a lot of issues around flooding, and we're working to make sure that we can whenever possible alleviate the flooding so that it doesn't create problems for adjacent property owners and other people who may be around a particular development. Newark has been going through a boom, pretty much since the start of the Barack administration in 2014, and we're constantly getting new projects in, and stormwater is one of the major issues and concerns. So much so that our mayor, he had the foresight long time ago to ask us to work to put together a stormwater utility. And that's something that we
yes,
actually started years ago, and it's been delayed for a couple of different reasons. One, we had a different leadership in our water and sewer department who has since passed, unfortunately, but we have a new leadership who has stepped in and is doing a great job. But we had to move towards the direction of replacing our lead service lines. I'm pretty sure a lot of the viewers may have heard about what we did, and it took a lot of work because we had to go to the state to ask, to change the legislation that would allow for us to spend public money on private lands. So the city has basically covered the costs of replacing over 23,000 lead service lines, throughout the city.
That's something.
It is. It's amazing.
That's
It is. You took the issue seriously and you fixed it.
Our mayor does not back down from a challenge. We were getting a lot of pushback and a lot of, should I say, ill feelings or words from different groups and organizations like the NRDC, and we took
filed lawsuits.
Yes,
right?
they did. Yeah. We took it head on, and we went in and we changed all of the lines out. We're probably about 95% complete, and in doing that, not only did we change the lines, but we also had a jobs program. We also had opportunities for minority and women-owned businesses and contractors to be part of the project, and we also have paved a lot of our streets as part of that work. So there's a lot that went into it. So I know I'm all over the place, but in terms of environmental concerns, stormwater is a big one for us. We're gonna get the stormwater utility going, hopefully very soon, because literally right after we started and kicked off the lead service line replacement project, we got hit with COVID, but we still worked through COVID to do our lead service line project. So the stormwater utility is probably going to be one of the next things that comes back, and we're going to, we really take stormwater very seriously.
I remember that was one of your first tasks, right?
Yes, early on.
Yes.
It's a big undertaking because no one in the state of New Jersey has a stormwater utility. We were the first ones who started, and everyone was watching us and seeing how we were going to do it.
Right, because the legislation is fairly new.
It's new now. We were doing it way before the legislation. Yes, like at least four or 5 years ago.
I like that style. You do it before there's legislation to do it. I like
that's
that.
the same thing that happened with the lead service line. We created the legislation in order to do it.
I even remember the first meeting we had with Tetra Tech, right?
Yeah, we met
Are they
with
still the
number.
consultants?
Actually, Tetra Tech was one of the consultants that we interviewed. We went with Black and Veatch, because they had great experience in creating stormwater utilities in other states around the country. So we really went through a real process to vet and get the best consultant that we could get to do this type of work for us.
Right.
That's great. It's wonderful that Newark is up leading the rest of the state, and that's clearly the way it should be. So great leadership there.
Great leadership.
Yep. And so I have a question for both of you, because it's something that I get concerned with as chief of staff and with the redevelopment. DEP just came out with some new regulations, and they're always pretty much coming out with new regulations. And I was just wondering how you gentlemen react to that, how you cope with these changes, and move forward with their guidance.
I can start.
Sure.
I think DEP is forever keep changing things as they go along. I think they mean well. They want to secure the state, but sometimes when is it going to be over? Just a pure example with a new NJIT rule, that's going to be affecting the entire state with floodplain development. So they try to learn from IDAs what was not in place, and they want to put it in place, which will be a very burdensome for township and municipalities.
Explain what the new NJ is, other than a great place to go for shows in Newark.
That's a good one. So they come with new rules that for floodplain, where people that were not part of the floodplain will be affected, will be in a new floodplain based on elevation-wise. So they're gonna raise the floodplain elevations by +2, which is a little bit harsh.
That brings it to 16 feet?
That will bring wherever elevation you are, you have to add it to +2. Like my area is 9, so it's gonna be 11.
Oh my gosh.
Most people that are in the were not part of the floodplain in my area might be in the floodplain, and that's mostly for new construction. That will require you elevate, or you do other improvements that will sustain.
And we have a rule that if you're doing improvements over, what is it, 40%, 50%, you have 50% you have to elevate.
Yes.
So and my thing with some of these new regulations is that they become effective almost immediately. So you don't have time to take a deep breath and say, how are we going to enact these? And so it's all for the good. You know, we do have to defend ourselves against climate change, but it doesn't have to be that fast. What's your feeling?
Yes, I agree 100% with Mike is saying. It makes it very difficult, not only on the developers, but also on some existing homeowners. So what used to not be considered a floodplain now is a floodplain. Now you may be required to purchase and maintain flood insurance, which could be very costly,
very expensive.
Yes, and at a time like right now, with the situation with inflation and being what it is, and it's very difficult to put on to homeowners who, in a lot of instances, are really just working to continue to pay bills and just to have somewhere to live. So then to add an additional expense of flood insurance can be very difficult for them. So yes, I agree. DEP is they're thinking for the greater good, but sometimes you have to think about what the impact is going to be on the existing property owners and homeowners, and what the impact is going to be going forward, for the long term.
Will they be able to afford the house?
Yes, and maintain the house that they may have lived in for 30 years, and then now you may have to lose it.
In Woodbridge, we have generations that comes from grandma to ma to you.
Exactly.
And you just want to stay in that house forever.
Yeah.
And then the rules change.
And we all know that it's already very costly to live in New Jersey. It's
right.
not it's not something that's easy to do as it is. So to impose these new rules can be detrimental to a lot of these communities.
Right. And as we have new development for residential, those added rules get added into the cost.
Yes.
And when we talk about affordability, it's very hard
yes.
to build an affordable unit
yes.
because of all the one of the things that I said that everything would be affordable if we would not have any state rules, town rules, DEP rules, just let people do what they want, then you could afford everything. But of course, we can't do that. That's one of my silly theories, right?
Sometimes it works in our favor, sometimes it don't.
Right, right. But so we talked about it. I think we've covered some of the challenges that you have. What about the rewarding part? What are the biggest rewards?
For me, I think being an engineer in a town like Woodbridge, I feel very satisfied. Not only I'm working with an administration that always thinking ahead. Sometimes I say, how can I keep up with the mayor? I never. I wake up.
Say that too.
Yeah, I will wake up in the morning and say, what might he has for me today? So that's it's very rewarding. I like what I do, and like you mentioned before, most important, help the consultant or the developers achieve what their dreams are. So, and I take pleasure in helping.
Yes. Being an engineer in itself is rewarding, just in the fact that you can, ride around and see some of the projects that you worked on.
Yes.
One of the reasons why I took the job in Newark, prior to working taking the job as the director, I did a lot of development projects for different developers in the city. So I could ride around and point to different projects that I've seen, and that's very rewarding, very satisfying to see something that you put together on paper to now see where people actually have somewhere to live, to shop, for entertainment. So, one of my things, in accepting the job was, it was nice to be able to go to a board meeting and see some of the other projects that were taking place. I have my project, but I see the other projects. Now when I go to the city, to a board meeting, I see every project that's going on. I'm involved with every project. I get to touch every single project that goes on in the city. So 20 years from now, when the city, has, grown and becomes, a
Build
Class
out.
A city, I can say, oh, I knew these projects from its inception. And, it's great to see, the ideas. I meet with the developers. I meet with their engineers before they even put a pen to paper to really give them guidance as to how these projects should go and what's going to be best for the community. So it's very rewarding to see all of these things happen from the development side.
So we have about 3 minutes left, and I didn't put this on the list of questions that I had sent you, but environmental justice is an important and big issue. And I think you have, in Newark, you have a lot of concern about that from your residents.
We do. Very much so. So, Newark, being, a transportation hub, and also, having, one of the largest ports in the country, we have a lot of issues around environmental justice and making sure that we have clean air. That's one of our focuses. We have a group of people in our enforcement division, that we're trying to now take on the task of making sure that we enforce the no idling laws.
Something we try to do.
In a lot of our developments, we try to make sure that they plant the appropriate number of trees. In addition to the stormwater regulations that we're dealing with, we're also looking at trying to help people with grants to make sure that they are looking to electrify their fleets. So there's a number of things that we're doing.
You can just say ditto, and you'll be fine. So this is a great field. A lot of great things happening in both cities, and if I may, because we have probably two of the best mayors in the state.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Not probably, definitely.
Yeah.
Two of the best mayors and two of the best directors of engineering. So I want to thank you both. This has been a great show, very informative, and I'm glad that I was able to bring the two of you together for a little reunion. And
Thanks for having us. Yes.
Maybe you'll take the time out and go out for lunch together.
Absolutely, yeah.
Appreciate having us on the show.
Yeah.
So, thank you for watching Greenable Woodbridge and being part of the challenge and part of the change. Thank you.